Yes, welcome to another episode of Life Talks with Fawole. We have the voice behind the camera, we have the wizard, and we have Ben in the studio. My brethren, big man. Give me some. Yeah, at any time, I'm going to ask you to give me 3. You already know what time it is, isn't it?
Do you know what?
1, 2, 3, come on.
Do you know what it is? Wait, do you know what the funny thing is about you doing that? So when I went to Vegas, must be like 5 years ago or something.
Viva
Las Vegas.
Vegas.
I've been a couple times, but we were on a stag, and when we got there, we were like, well, we need to have a secret handshake, you know. And the secret handshake was 1, 2, 3.
Salute,
We wanted it to be simple because you got all the basketball ones and they go on for a long time. We can't be doing them all the time. So we were like, let's have something that's short and sweet. So when I saw you do that just there, I was like, yeah, I know that one.
Yeah, come on, universal. Yeah. Ben, how do we know each other?
So we bumped in. So I'll tell you what it is. The same way I meet a lot of people, but don't get to know as in depth as you. Is I saw you in the gym and then I saw you at Rowan's and I think you stopped me because you'd seen me running all the time. So you were like, I see you in the gym and then I see you running all the time. And you would not believe how many people stop me in the street now. They were like, "What? I see you running all the time. Do you train or something?" I just run in it. And then we obviously got to speak more in the gym and then it just took off from there.
I just think he's a thief. Like always running. You see, not serious. You know what you see? I'm telling you.
Do you know what it is?
The black man, he's running down the road. Every time you see him, he's running down the road.
Do you know what it is? I did last March. I don't know if any of you have heard of David Goggins before.
Yeah.
So he does a 4x. I mean, he runs a lot, much more than I do. But he does this challenge, which is a 4x48. So you run 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. So you start at 8 o'clock on a Friday, and then 12 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock. So I was running at like 4 o'clock in the morning, and I was in an all black outfit, and I thought, well, this will be interesting if the police drive past, isn't it? Because why am I out running this time? They didn't bump into me in the end.
Yeah.
That's what Dan Banks challenged you
to.
Challenge.
You say?
That's what Dan Banks.
It's not that bad. It's not that bad, to be honest. Like 4 miles is not that bad, but it's every 4 hours to do it because obviously you've got to try and get sleep in there as well. So
I have an injury, so I was unable to
actively participate
in that challenge. I apologise to my followers who's expecting me to do that. Big up to Dan Banks out there, you know what I mean? Amazing coach. And you did it. You did the 4x4.
Oh yeah, that was mine. I didn't do it for anything. I just did it.
So I'm saying it's a
minor. At the time it was in lockdown, innit? So I just thought, oh well, I might as well do it, and it was fine.
I see him. He's in good shape, as you can see. And I see him. You know when you see a man just running, sometimes when you see him running, sometimes you check what's he running from. Like I said, like he just nicked something. But always you see him running and looking good when he's running, very focused on what he was doing. Nothing else was kind of getting involved.
You know what? It's because I'm listening to podcasts. So when I'm running, but unless I'm racing or something, I did a marathon a few weeks ago, so I listen to music there. But generally when I'm out running normally, I listen to podcasts. Now I listen to my podcast at like 2.5, 3 times speed. Yeah. So because it's going like the heart rate for me helps me to keep up with it because obviously it's faster than normal speaking. So because of that, I'm just lost in my own world when I'm doing that.
Yeah,
which I've run past a lot of people and I don't know, they notice me, I don't notice them. I was in Muswell Hill a couple of months ago. My mom came down for the day and we were just I can't remember where she wanted to go. Some guy stopped me. He's like, "This is the first time I've ever seen you walking." I was like, "What?" And I don't know him. I never noticed him. But he's like, "Yeah, I see you running every single day, just like religiously." I was like, "Yeah." So the once I met him once, then I notice him when I'm out. But otherwise, I don't really I don't pick up.
Peripheral, yeah. That's a nice thing, you know that. Like to be able to just be focused on what you're doing and have that detach from the world and stuff and just run. Like how do you feel apart from zoning out and everything? How does it make you feel like internally, emotionally?
Well, it's just kind of like it's like your exit from the world. So obviously when you've got, I started running. I never considered myself to be a runner. I just go from A to B. I always joke to people because I moved down here. And I lived around here actually at the time, and I worked down in central London. So rather than get on the tube, I was like, well, I might as well just run because I don't like doing cardio on treadmills.
This is not. It's natural to you. It's nice. I wish I could do it as well.
Well, you say
I live down here, but I run to. I just live central. I just run down there.
To me, but when I was younger, I was overweight. Did no activity whatsoever, which I think kind of formed the training that I grew up to do. But I was like, well, I might as well. Like I say, I don't like running on the treadmill, so I was going to run outside anyway. So I was like, well, I might as well do that. I think it's like 5 miles to the work at the time. So it was like 5 miles there, 5 miles back, hit the gym. Then when I'm in the gym, I can just focus on doing weights. And then I move further out. And then it became like a 7 mile into each distance. And then there was an office in Canary Wharf, so it became 10 miles in each distance. So you're running 20 miles a day, and then so after a while,
it's nothing.
Well, because I don't, and I don't say it like that. Because I say for me, I don't run as if I'm treating myself as a runner. When people call me a runner, I'm like,
you're a runner.
At the end of the day, I use my legs to go from A to B. That was how it came about. Yeah. Some people use a car. I use my legs.
Let me just find something. I want to show you something. Can you tell me what that says there at the top? Can you see that?
Benjamin Runner, yeah.
His name, I put it Benjamin, I don't get runner. That's
how everybody else knows, because I did the Brighton Marathon a few weeks ago, and the reason I ended up doing that is because a friend had a family member that he knew who had a charity place for raising money for her daughter who's going through cancer treatment, and it was only like 6 weeks.
Wish them well, whoever they are.
Yeah, her name is Ariana, the Wonder Woman. You can find her on Facebook. There's like
Ariana.
Yeah.
Ariana, the Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
God bless you, Ariana, the Wonder
beautiful
Woman.
Beautiful little girl. Like, and when I obviously got asked to do it, I was like, well, of course I'm going to do it. Like, what she's gone through in her life is more than I've gone through in my 35 years, right? Yeah. But they needed somebody who could do it at like relatively short notice. Yeah. So I didn't have to train. And the irony is people was like, how is your training going? I'm like, it's not really going anyway, because it's just like life is training. So it was just ready to go.
For you, she's a good
but
thing.
even when I turned up and when I was doing the marathon, it was the first one I'd done, because they said, have you done a marathon before? I said, well, I haven't, but I'd done a 50 miler back in November. So I did it like the wrong way around. Most people will build up to a marathon and then they might go further. Whereas I'd done an ultra marathon and then before.
So marathon is what, 26? Sorry.
Yeah. So anything above 26 miles is considered an ultra marathon. So if you've done 30 miles, basically that's considered an ultra marathon too. But the one I signed up to it in COVID, and people sponsored me for it, and then they cancelled it. So I ended up running 50 miles around just the area. Yeah. So I started at mine
to complete the task,
because people had sponsored me already. So I was like, they said do it virtually. I'm like, I'm telling you, there's nothing virtual about running 6.5 hours. So I started at mine. I was running around Finsbury Park and the rest of it, and I think I started at 9 and I finished at like 3:30, I want to say. And I stopped outside of Tesco's around me, right? And I stopped and I looked around, and you've got all these people just coming back from the shop and stuff, and I'm like, no one has a clue what the hell just happened here. Like, I've just run 50 miles just between us and me. And so I did it they did it properly last year, so in November. So at that time, at least I got to have people who saw me at the finish line. So once you do those, it's just like, but like I say, for me, it's not running. Like, whenever somebody talks to me about training, I'm like, it's just training for life. Yeah. So if I was to break down, for example, let's say we went on a road trip somewhere and we break down and we're 25 miles from the nearest town or village. Something likely that might happen, right? But if we need to get to people to get help in, I can do that. Like, somebody walking that distance is going to take you like 7 hours.
I want to, there's 2 free things, because I don't, before I forget them, because they jump in and out my head things, right? The first thing is, what was the difference feeling in the completing the 50 miles and 26 miles? Because no one was there, but someone was there, but you still knew you completed things, even though you said it's just training to you anyway, but you completed a task that you set out to complete. Do you know what I mean?
The 50 miler there was people at the end of the 50 miler. So I did the 50 miler locally, and then I did it. They let me be registered for free last year. So I did it. It was from Aldershot to Portsmouth. That one's very different because you spend a lot of the time alone. So like, we turned up and they said they've got like a guide runner, and I just looked at him and I thought, I'm not sure, he doesn't look like a guide runner to me. Like, that wasn't me being big-headed. The other guy, I think we both said the same thing. He didn't look like he was going to be keeping up at the pace that we would be running at. So there was me and another guy. We basically just split off from everybody else. But you spend the majority of the time by yourself, because obviously for 50 miles, it's not a mapped out course. You're having to self-navigate on your phone. You're running through a lot of, I think at one point I looked down to the side and we'd just basically gone up just a massive height, as in elevation wise. So you're doing all of that up and down, through fields, through the rest of it. So that one is quite almost lonely. Like, and I got to the end in Portsmouth. I don't ever want to go to Portsmouth after this, because apparently I must have gone through like the worst part of it. But the last couple of miles are just like the longest miles of my life. And I was listening to music, and I was getting to the last mile, and when I'm listening to music when I'm doing running, I listen to, basically it's going to sound a bit cheesy, but I listen to like the Avengers soundtrack. So you know the Avengers, the film Marvel. So I listen to the Avengers soundtrack, and I listen to a mix of that and then some other songs,
heroic music,
and then Rocky as well, right?
Yeah, that's it. Right. So I was going to say,
so I'm getting to the last mile, and Rocky the track from the last the
Eye of the Tiger?
12th round. No. So in the 12th round of the first fight, when he just, do you know when he's getting to the end and all he wants to do, he's like, yeah. So and he doesn't want to win, does he?
You're going in, B.
So this is, and I got it from David Goggins when I was listening to it, but then it picked
You got
up
the whole
on me.
soundtrack.
Yeah. So I got all of them, but on that last one, when he gets to the 12th round, he doesn't actually want to win, right? He just wants to get up at the end. He said, I've got to go the distance. He doesn't even want a rematch, he says. Obviously, he has a rematch because we see it in the next film after. But he's like, I just needed to be able to go the distance.
Yeah.
So I have that track on because it's like, right, whatever it is, just know that you're going the distance.
See,
so that came on at
tracks.
like, yeah. So it's like,
it's one of them 80s, yeah, because the club's just getting in my head.
Right, and so you've got all of these that filter through. So I've got that came on in like the last mile. I was like, I needed that, man. So that one took it out of me because you've got to have like your bag on the back and the rest of it. Yeah, so there's a mandatory kit that they tell you have to have because obviously if you were to get injured somewhere, you have to have like emergency kit. Whereas the marathon that I did in Brighton, that was completely different. I mean, that was a buzzing experience because you've got crowds all along, like literally all along the whole route. There's a part where you're going away from the main town, but the rest of it, you've got people who are coming out. You've got children on the side offering you like sweets and oranges and the rest of it.
Nice.
So that one I was buzzing for, and the funny thing was I was walking up to the start of it, and there was another guy trying to work out where he needed to go, and I said, well, I can tell you where to go because the place where you registered wasn't the place of the same as the start place. So when I turned up on the train the day before, I'd gone to the starting part, and I'm like, how come this place is empty? I thought there was like thousands of people do it. I'm looking around for ages, realised I'm in the wrong place. So I need to walk a mile down the road. So I said to him, like, yeah, I know where we're going. And so we started talking about running. And when I said that I run a lot, he was like, so have you got a time that you're aiming for? I'm like, I don't know. They made me put one in when I signed up. So I put 3.5 hours to 4 hours. He's like, do you have a pace that you're aiming for? I'm like, no, not really. He's like, it sound like you're going to be quick. Are you going to go to the front to get ahead of the crowds? I'm like, I don't know.
Strategy.
Is that what you're supposed to do? Because I've never done one of these before. So that's why I say I'm not a runner, because you've got all of these people. People will ask me about what pace should you run at, what training should you have, and the rest of it. I'm like, all I can tell you is I will start at A, and I know I will get to B at the end, and the rest of it will take care of it. In the end, I did it in 3 hours and 5 minutes. And then, ironically, when I got to the end of that, I was like, somebody asked me, is that a good time? I'm like, I'm not really sure. But apparently it is a good time. But then I was like, I wish I could have broken a 3 hour one. However, we can do it again. Yeah, we could. I can do it in another one in the future as well.
You're well, you said if you break down and then you can't get there and all of that. Remember you said that. That
doesn't. Yeah, but that happens for some people, because the thing is.
No, you don't understand what I'm saying. Remember you say if your car breaks down and you're stranded somewhere. That's different. Yeah. So what I'm saying, when you were saying in the first place, it remind me of like Spartans or Lord of the Rings, where man will run for days. You know, like when it's time to run, if you got to run for that, and in that instance you have to run, or a soldier. But put it.
I have a Spartan warrior tattooed on my.
Yeah, come
my
on, of course you have. Of course you have. Yeah, of course. So you should have. Come on.
What is your profession?
Yeah, sorry if I hit you in the ears there. But you get that, like, because there's that being at peak fitness constantly, because you run everywhere. Like, is that something that's within you? Because we say about what the Neanderthalic man could be and what drives us and everything. Because I already know you got a head for numbers. We're gonna get into that, and like things being right in the right place and everything. But that drive within you, and that, like when you're on your own, graders going up and down. What is that?
Do you know what it is? I think it's so it's a couple of reasons for this. So, firstly, I think it is beneficial for anybody, men or women, whoever you are, just to do something difficult every day. Just do hardship, put yourself through hardship, right? And the reason for that being is, in general, when you look at, there are different aspects of the world which are very challenging today, right? But I always compare it to when I'm talking to people, and we'll probably get onto it when we get into numbers, because it talks about economics output as well. But you kind of have cycles of how society works, and you've got like weak men create hard times, and then it goes through to strong men create good times. Now, the reality is those strong men are forced through hardship. So if you look at people who went through like the 1930s into the 1940s, right? Even if you look at what it is considered to be like an adult nowadays, when you're 18 nowadays, you're not really, nobody's expecting you to act like an adult, right? When you're 21, they're not. 25, they might be starting to, and that's not for everybody, but in general, that's the case, right? And then by the time they're 30, they might be like, well, I'm going to grow up and start acting like an adult and being responsible. Go back to like the 30s and 40s. When you were 18, you were supposed to be, if you're a man, you were looking after the house. If you're a woman, you were taking responsibilities. Right? You were an adult then. 21, you just got more and more responsibilities burdened on top of that. If you look at who they gave birth to and then going into the 60s, it became slightly easier for you to live through. Obviously, again, generalizing because there are different demographics and different races of society, but in parts of developed worlds, at least, it got slightly easier to live. And then you go into the 80s, and again, got slightly easier to get by. And then we've got to the generation. If you look at the generation we've got at the moment, I always say, like, I don't mean this in a flippant way, but I hope we never have to go to war, because I don't think we've got the kind of people who would have been able to storm Normandy. Like, and I don't mean that.
I'm dead. You know, stop eating chicken and chips, because when the war sirens blow, you're not gonna be ready.
But they're not good, and because you.
Oh my God, chicken and chips and whatever the phone thing is.
But it's not even that. Man. It's the quality of the character that sits behind them, because you have people who. I'm not talking about whether you agree with the country you live in or not, but do we actually have a population that's capable that, if there was something that was worth fighting for, would actually be able to stand up and fight for it? And I don't believe that we do. But that's almost a representation of the cycles. Like I say, if you're brought up where you don't really have to go through hardships, because you can go to different parts of the world, right, where we've got people who we just get pressures about stuff, where life general day to day is easy, right? Go to parts of Africa and you've got people who have to walk miles and miles and miles just for water. Just for water, right? That we can go to the shop. I asked, can I fill up my bottle? You just gave me a bottle there, right? So it's different experiences around the world. But over here, we've generally not being put through hard stuff on a daily basis. So when it comes to my training, I'm like, that's just part of do hard stuff. Like, I've got some friends before and they were like, just put yourself through, I don't know, a workout or a run. Well, on a daily basis, I'm running 10 to 15 miles. I'm going to the gym to lift weights 6 or 7 times a week. I'm consuming a lot of information to put myself through stuff. And so through all of that, I can't go out and create myself being in hardships, right? But I can force my body to do hard, difficult stuff. And when I look
to be ready,
to be ready, because also if I'm thinking about when we were breaking down, right? Let's say I live in a multi-story apartment block. Let's say there was a fire and somebody old lives next door. Then I'm not saying that this would happen, but I would have the capability to help be able to get them out of the thingy. So all of these things, you don't know what life's going to chuck at you. But I see a lot of people who are training. You might be big, for example, but you're not having functional movement, right? So if I get into some shit,
wipe your own hair,
and that's what I mean. And the thing is, and I think it's a guy.
God bless you, big guys, though.
well, I've got, but it defines how you can approach difficult scenarios as well, right? Because there's a guy that I listen to. He's a former Army sergeant. His name's Jocko Willink. He does a podcast. He writes a couple of books as well. Jocko Willink. Okay, he's over in the US. But one of the things he always says is, when you're about to, what's the best thing that you can do if you're about to get into a physical altercation?
Me.
What's the best thing that you can do if you're going to get into a physical? Exactly, right. But if you're big but you're not functional, then you can't run. And there's a joke that goes, right, if you and I are running from a bear, I don't have to outrun the bear. I just have to outrun you, because the bear will stop at its first sign of food, right? So if you're functional, then you can take on all these different scenarios.
I like that.
So that's the importance of, like, when I say when you're training for life, it just means you can take on the things that throw things at you, or you can prepare yourself as much as possible. Because everybody assumes, because I run these distances a day, that I want to do it. Look, I get up and there are some times where you're just looking at your trainings, or I'm thinking, I don't really want to go to the gym today, but if I don't do it, then I know I'll feel lazy. So you force yourself to do it. And you'll know this, you go to the gym, like, people just assume, well, everybody who goes to the gym, well, yeah, they're used to going to the gym because they love doing it and it's easy. No, we stress our bodies and strain it through lifting heavy weights, from running if you're running long distances. It's not all, yes, some of it is like, you can have like your time and headspace to get out. But there's nobody who goes to the gym who every single day is like, yeah, I wouldn't rather be sitting on the sofa eating and kicking back. But then you would look the physical representation of somebody who does that.
There's all the other stuff. There's the physical stuff,
but
and the
you
energy.
Don't get the benefits from it.
It's using a better thing. It's like drinking a can of Coke and drinking water right now. Same difference.
Some people's gyms, they're social. You know what I mean? Like, I've seen, because I've done some filming in the gym, I just see certain people coming to chill out. Like,
I see that, man. And the thing is, and I don't mind. It's fine. Nobody ever. I haven't had a training partner for years, right? The only time I get annoyed is when they're on kit and equipment that you want to use, right? And you're like, how many sets you got left? Oh, I don't know. And I'm like, but one, you do it. There's etiquette, right? You could just say, well, you can work in between me. But they're not even interested in that. They're like, I don't know, quite a few left. And then they'll go back to their conversation, and then they'll take like 2 minutes before they do their next set again. Yeah. So I've got nothing against socialising in the gym, right? Completely cool with that. Just don't be holding up the other kit that everybody else is trying to get on.
Piss,
but you're right. A lot of people go there, because if you look at like the gym we go to, it is just fitness equipment, whereas a lot of people will go to like a Virgin, and it's going to cost you like 4 times the price. But what I realised is, when I was thinking, I can't remember the other upmarket one that they do, but what I realised is they would, David Lloyd, and they would talk about when they were sitting around afterwards, because their experience is a full experience. So they go and work out, and then they go and have a coffee afterwards. The lounge. And they do all of that. So I'm like, I'm just going to the gym to get the shit done. But I do understand for some people it is that social routine.
You respect the lounge, because at least now the gym's just the gym, innit? You know what I mean?
They've got time. They've got the time to lounge, and their lifestyle allows them the time to lounge. Because me, if I had the time to lounge in the gym when I finished training, I would lounge. But I just don't have the time to lounge.
Some of them places, they got like proper facilities for you to work out, sauna, pool, lounge.
Yeah, no, I would lounge.
Like, so some people don't even come to work out.
Yeah, 100%.
They've come to the lounge.
They've come to the lounge.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, because the lounge is nice. You've got Wi-Fi in there. You know what I mean? Bust your laptop, get your work done.
It's a social setting. It's a social setting. Talk to me about being a young man. How was you as a child? Talk about family and coming up.
Can I before you change? Can I ask him a few questions about the running? See, like as you started running, what age did you start getting into running?
So probably build into the question you were going to ask me afterwards. But probably about 15, 16. Because I wasn't doing any when I was younger. I wasn't into football or anything. Like basically, and this is a true story. Like I was a fat and overweight kid, but I used to go to my granddad's at the weekend. He used to buy a bargain bucket. A 6-piece bargain bucket. He used to eat 1 piece. I used to eat 5 pieces. Then I used to play my Super Nintendo. Didn't do any sports. Didn't do anything else. So overweight kid. Used to get bullied because of it. And then around about 15, something just switched in me, and that kind of turned me to push back against the bullying, but also be like, well, I'm going to start training now. So then I went from getting into the gym to starting to play football, and then the running picked up from there. And then, as I say, then once I moved down here, what must be like 12 years ago now, as soon as I moved down here, it was running to work. So it just became habitual after that. And so when I was talking to somebody, I think they were talking about how long I run, and I was like, but you have to appreciate the fact that for the last 12 years, I've been running anywhere from 80 to 100 miles a week on a consistent basis. So it's not that it's easier for me because I'm naturally God-given blessed better. It's just, if you do something for that consistent amount of time, it just builds.
You must be remembered to it. It was.
It's
like
if you go back to my younger years, I wouldn't have been able to do it. The funny thing, there's a funny experience I had before when I went home, right? Because people used to ask me, they're like, "How did you get a big chest?" And I was like, "Look, there ain't no shortcut. I used to be fat, right? So I used to have your man boobs, and then so I had something to convert into having a chest." But I went back to my hometown where I grew up once, and I bumped into a girl who knew me from school, and it was like a flip turn of what is the normal scenario that plays out between a man and a woman, because I had a low cut top on and she was talking to me, and all she was doing was looking at my top, and that was obviously, you know, the experience that we might have to go through, but I was like, that's the first time that the table had been turned. Well, she was with her boyfriend, she's just looking at me, and she's just, because I think the thing is she just suddenly seen me in shape, and she was just used to kind of the young overweight guy that I was there. You don't see somebody for 10 years and all of a sudden they pop up and they look the complete opposite. So
It's probably got a bit moist, mate. It is what it is. Oh God.
Yeah. So just now, when you run, like your breathing patterns. So it's what the last thing about it. Like your breathing pattern. Do you feel like your breathing patterns are totally different to like? And how would you say they switched from how they used to be in terms of the average person to now a runner? That, like you said, you could be anywhere. You could just run 20 miles. You know what I mean? Go and sort out the petrol.
So do you know what I would say is it's kind of practice. So now I can be in 2 different modes. So I can, if I want to run fast or I want to really push myself, then that's when I'll switch to music, and then I can do like probably a 6.5 mile pace, which is quite a fast pace. But otherwise, if I'm listening to this podcast, I'll probably slow down and I'll do about 7.5 minutes, maybe 8 miles or so. None of it is uncomfortable for me breathing unless I'm doing it consistently at a high pace. So when I did the marathon, that one never really pushed me breathing wise, but obviously 26 miles in like just over 3 hours, it was a fast pace that I was going at. But if you're starting from scratch, I always say to people, like, for me, somebody says, I just done a 50 miler, but I follow people in ultra marathons who do 100 milers.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I ain't done shit. But that's because of where my barrier is.
Definitely.
But if you're going from nothing, then there's big value to just pushing yourself to say, right, let me just go out and do 1 to 2 miles. Because if you're a heavy breather on it, then 1 to 2 miles is, you've gone from nothing to 1 to 2 miles. Just say you can do that 2 times a week, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden that 2 miles becomes a bit easier, and you'll be like, right, I just add a tiny bit on top of that, and I've done a 5k.
Yeah.
And then if you can get yourself just doing that a bit continuously to get from 5k to 10k, you'll be surprised how much difference it makes. All of a sudden you're like, well, I couldn't see myself to get to 10k, but it's just like it goes from incremental to just like, oh, all of a sudden I can do more than I can do now. So I think for in general, when you're starting to, when you go out, it gets to a point where your body gets accustomed enough to it that it just becomes it then just becomes a consistency thing to get longer in distances. But it's funny, I was talking to my friend when I'd done the marathon, because I think what I'm noticing is, because when I was running, I rocked up and I was wearing a vest, and like if I'm wearing a vest, people,
wearing a what?
I was wearing a vest to run, but I turned up in a vest to run. Obviously I lift at the gym. I saw people looking at me like, you don't look like you belong here, right? And then I was going past people who looked like they were what you expect a runner to be. But what I've noticed is, and they would be stopped for cramp and the rest of it. Well, I was getting to the last mile, the last 5 or 6 miles, and I still had pace in me. Like if the right song came on, then I still picked up a thing. I was like, can I try and make just under 3 hours? So I still have a lot left in the locker. But what I've noticed is, and I'm followed with people that I follow on social media, is there seems to be more of a rise of people, similar to what I've said here, is that I'm not running to be a runner, I'm just running as training. So you see a lot of guys that mix it with resistance training. And I think I've said to somebody before, some people have stopped me and they're like, well, how come you never get injured? I'm like, I don't know, and I don't know that this to be the science, but I'm like, because I work out and I do weights as well, and I especially do weights on my legs. I think especially when it comes to doing something like a marathon, then somebody who's a runner is not got the resistance side of it to have the long distance stamina. So I think there's definitely a benefit to, if you're going to be doing cardio, just doing it as part of a holistic training. So you're doing the weight and the resistance on top of doing the running as well. Because all I can say is, in my own personal experiences, when it comes to distances, I don't think I would be doing 50 milers if I was 50 milers at a relatively decent pace if I only ran and didn't have any weight on top of me. So I just think for me, it helps for that holistic thing. Because again, at the same time, as a best I can say, if you're about to get into a fight and you have to run, well, if all you can do is run, but you can't actually do anything physical afterwards, then you're also pretty up the spot. It's
in
good
trouble,
to have a
mate.
balance.
Yeah. If you ain't got nothing left in the tank when they catch you, you're in trouble.
You got to be able to do something, right? Even if you just push them away.
You're in trouble. Kit, you talk about Kit, yeah. 'Cause I saw the marathon running. Do your nipples burn?
Nah.
You've never heard of that though?
I have heard of that before.
You know, they burn their nipples running.
You can get that if you're wearing the wrong stuff. I don't think I've experienced it before, but I know that you can, and you definitely can on longer distances. And it depends on the temperature as well. Like if you're getting that in heat, because what will happen is you can sweat, and then it can mix with the type of vest that you're wearing.
It's a lot.
Have you ever reached a destination and felt emotional? Because you push your body, and you're just proud that you got that.
I think I kind of did when I did the 50 miler in the distance you were supposed to do. So started in Aldershot in the morning and finished in Portsmouth, and because that was when I did it here. It was all, I kind of had to make up the route. So a lot of it was flat. Like I tried to use like the part between Finsbury Park and Highgate, which has got like a bit of off-road stuff, right? Just to recreate as much as I could. But I could not have prepared my body for the difference when you're going through, because you're running through fields, you're running through a lot of elevation. It'd been raining that time as well, so you're running through a lot of difficult mud. So that one was like, that was I've done something decent here, because my body did feel, like I say, when I got to those last miles, when I did it here, I actually did over the distance because I was doing it on my Garmin, and my Garmin was behind my Strava, so I was like, let me make sure I get them both over the line. So I was doing more distance there.
I don't know what those things are, you know.
Garmin is a watch that you just to what you track your running distances on.
Garmin.
Strava's the Garmin is the watch, and then Strava's the app. It's just like there are lots of apps that you can do it for though. But when I did the one to Portsmouth, like I say, that last mile, I was just like, I physically cannot wait to get to the end of this. But then, funnily enough, so they dropped they dropped off our bags because they said they were going to arrive there at 3:00, and I'm like, I'm not sure about that because I think I'm going to be there before that. And I got there at like 1:15. So then I had to wait around. They didn't have any like a recovery kit there, so my legs were like seizing up, and I was supposed to be going out that night. So I said to my friends, I was like, if this is the case, I'm not going to be able to go out because my legs are seized up. I was finding it difficult to walk. Yeah. I got home and they were like, no, you're going to make it out. But I don't think they really believed me. I know they didn't believe me because their reaction when I turned up, I was like, nah, I've got a reputation to uphold here, right? I'm supposed to be, I'll have a run and joke with my friend, like man or machine, right? So I was like, I have a reputation to uphold here. So I got home, got into an ice bath. I bought like four packs of I went to a shop and bought 4 packs of ice, and the guy was like, "You about to have a party?" I was like, "No, I'm about to have a bath." He's like, "What?" And so I got in that, and then I managed to, and then I basically went out for an all-night rave until 6:00. So I'd start the morning at 6:00 in Aldershot, run 50 miles to Portsmouth, got the train back to London, ended up in East London until 6:00 the next morning.
Yeah, the ice bath helped though, innit?
Yeah, that. So I got the energy back, but by the end of that race, I think that's the first. I think that's the first time where I was like, that was a distance. I feel like this was an actual achievement. Yeah.
So, 15 years old and you're fat, you said.
Yeah.
How did you get out of that, and how we going back from brothers and sisters as well?
Yeah, so I've got two older sisters and one younger sister.
All girls?
Yeah.
You're the only boy?
Yeah. Okay. So my two oldest.
What's the family background as well?
So it's funny because my mum is Scottish.
Yeah.
and my dad is sort of born here, but the descent is from the Caribbean. So yeah. But it's just funny when you said that earlier, and I was like, I know that.
We're out here.
So I've got my two sisters, and my mum and dad got divorced when I was like 5, so I spent like the weekends there. So obviously my mum has brought us up, and to be fair, I think that built up the character I've become since then. Because you've got a single mum who's brought up, all of us have made well enough in our professional life, which speaks volumes to her as a mum, right?
God bless your mum, man.
Well, yeah, she's an amazing woman. Because like one of my sisters is a solicitor, the other one works in a probation service. Yes. I work in IT. But I managed to convince people, should I say, that I know what I'm doing enough for them to pay me apparently. So yeah, and we've all become self-sufficient. So and that was all made by her. I didn't have. I mean, I haven't spoken to my dad now in like what. I want to say maybe 10 years.
Wow, it's a long time.
So we had a relatively functional relationship growing up. But yeah, when I was... So I don't know why I got into the habit of being overweight. And like I said, I just used to eat a lot of food because of that. I couldn't really get into like football teams because I wasn't fit. I was out of shape. Yeah. So I didn't even try. I used to, like I say, I used to spend my time playing the computer. And then I just think something switched around. I always say to people, like, I've gone through numerous iterations of me, so I joke sometimes like I'm Ben 10 because it takes the piss out of that.
Right? But I used to like Ben 10. You know Ben 10, innit?
Of course.
So about 15 or 16 hours, I was like, nah, there's gonna be. I'm not taking this anymore, and that coincided with me starting to go to the gym. So I think I was working. I got a job. Somehow I ended up going to this gym, which was just like a no-nonsense gym, bodybuilders gym. All the security bouncers went there. I think it was because I worked in an Italian restaurant, just washing dishes. And one of the guys who went in there, it was kind of like that. It wasn't an Italian guy; he was Albanian, but there was something definitely dodgy about him. But one of the guys who came in frequently owned a gym, so I got into the habit of going there, and then I was quickly being pushed by the guy just to get bigger. But that coincided with that whole switch of I was just fed up of being bullied then. And then I almost went to the flip side of it. At that point in time, then a lot of the people who were my friends started to alienate themselves from me because it was just, I guess it was easier for them when I was just submissive. And then on the other side,
they started changing towards you.
Yeah, because then they weren't able to take advantage of me anymore. So then it kind of flipped. I'm friends with a lot of them now still. But I largely had kind of deviated off, and they were like, I don't really like this side of you. If I look back, I probably wasn't the nicest guy. But at a point in time, after you've been bullied for enough years, and I'm not talking about seriously talking about seriously always being beaten up, but being belittled on a continual basis, right? Yeah. Then that takes its toll, and it's like you almost just break out of that. So that kind of formed into the same pattern as when I was starting to work out as well. And then off the back of that, you just grow through your life experiences and just became a stronger, more. It's once you break that pattern, and then you build that with training and the rest of it as well, and then you go back and take back the confidence in yourself. And as I say, it wasn't an easy path. I look back, I was saying to somebody recently, I was like, and this is like someone I used to work with, like in my early 20s. I was like, I look back and I was like an arrogant. I thought I knew it all at that age. I was like, I don't even know how you used to put up with me. They were like, you could be a test at time, right?
Well, at 15?
I know this was like
20.
in my early 20s, but this is just the continual iterations. When I look back at them now, I can see the evolution of me as a person. Yeah. But when I look back, I'm like, I don't even know how people put up with me. Some of my behaviour was not.
Would you go through necessary. A violent stage?
I didn't ever go through a violent stage. I only had one fight at school. That was with one guy. I went to football training afterwards. He turned up the next day. Funny, he said I'll get you tomorrow, and he turned up the next day and he'd broken his hand when he punched me in the head. So we didn't fight after that because it took like 6 months for him to recover. So no, I never really got into a violent phase. I think it was because when I never went to university, but I just came straight out of sixth form and then I went straight into work. So I don't think I ever descended. I never got into that pattern of the world. Yeah. And because I lived there, I grew up in Ipswich, but I worked in London. So I was at this point in time, like I'd gone from being young and not really doing anything. The first time I was playing sports in football, I was maybe about 13, but I was a goalie. And I remember, I still think back, they bought me, everybody had like baggy kits out on the pitch. And I was the only kid that had a tight kit. And I was the biggest kid. So I used to spend like the whole match just breathing in and people used to laugh because I used to be quite agile just for somebody who was like that. But then by the time I was like 17, 18, I'd moved to playing outfield. So I was playing football, like training Tuesdays, Thursdays. I was going to the gym all the days outside of that. Mm-hmm. And I was working in London. So I was commuting 2 hours back and forth. So once you fill yourself life with all of those things, you don't even have time to get involved in the rest of it. So I deviated that, but with a degree to violence, I think I could be like emotionally aggressive in my to people, and that is why when I look back in kind of that 20s, I'm like, I don't know how you used to put. I mean, and there was somebody I met after I'd worked with him before.
I'm saying a reason for that, you know.
Well, there was somebody I worked with before, and he had said to somebody, and I didn't take this in any way. I was shocked that I could have been this bad that they said it about me, but he had said to his team, because I was getting on one of their nerves, and he'd gone in, and when I was out of the room, and he said, Ben may be a C word, but he's usually always right.
You mean cunt?
Right? Yeah. I didn't know whether you were going to say it or not, right? Mm-hmm. So, but he's usually already right. And I didn't take that in any way, shape or form as a compliment of I was right about stuff. I took that as wow. At this point in time, we were like 3 years down the line, so I was different. And that's why they felt that they could say this to me. But I was like, wow, if that was how I was outwardly being represented to people. And when I look back now, I understand why that was. But that was because of the level kind of arrogance and the directness that I had towards people.
You like that, but that because what I want to get in there is, from you said you had to make that change and you made the disparity between certain friends you had. It was necessary for you to change your outward mannerism. There's things you had to change within yourself to get through that time. You had to become, for want of a better phrase, a cunt to get through that, because before that, what you was doing wasn't working. So when you were saying that you changed and certain people changed towards you, it was necessary. And realistically, that isn't necessarily you being a see you next Tuesday. That's just you taking hold of what you need to take hold of and being assertive and strong. And anyone who can't really get with it, because if you're doing the right things within that parameter, it's their shortcomings. The people that have taken advantage. You know what I'm saying?
Do you know what it is though? It's kind of too, because you've got the different phases. So that was when I would probably been like, I don't want to take any shit when I'm at school. At this point in time was when I was like 21 to 25 or something.
No, but the transcendence, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but so it moves forwards. But so I'd moved from kind of just being a pushback to being, at that point, like I say, I was quite arrogant, and also because I was not moving up at a pace. And I've got no qualifications, so I'm all self-educated in what I do, but I was progressing up relatively good. So I was like people were blowing smoke up my own ass, right?
Yeah.
So it was self-perpetuating, right?
What I'm seeing here, Ben, right? Just for you, just outward looking in, you've got to the 15-year-old now, and you've gone to the gym. So there's the fights coming to you. The being hard every day. That's what it's coming to you, and you're putting it now. You're fighting for everything that you want, and that's what I see. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's your fighting. You'll do it however you need to do it, and that's what that is.
And that's what I say. That's why it's like the evolution. Like it's the multiple modes, and some people change and some people don't, because you have to be inward looking as well to see this. And don't get me wrong. There's like I just avidly consume information as much as I can every day on all different areas, right? Some of that comes across some psychology, some comes across a kind of behavioral economics. So when you're reading through all of this stuff, it then makes you reflect back and think about yourself, and then that can't help but change yourself. But to change yourself, you need to be educating yourself to pick up on the things that need to be changed, right? Because if you're not willing to learn and develop, then you pretty much just stay the same as you are. And a lot of people do that, and they can get by like that. That's completely fine. But it was only because of that I could look back and at the points in time be able to say, if I hadn't gone through, and again, certain experiences humble you as well. Like, so when I'd moved down here, I was earning relatively good money. I used to live around here, actually. I'd gone through.
You look familiar.
I'd actually lived 3 or 4 places around. Because when I said where this was, I was like, why does that name ring a bell? And I used to be at the GPs around the corner.
Okay,
That close, yeah?
Yeah.
Wow.
I lived 1-2 just like on the road over Market Road, and then I lived on just down the road from the Emirates. And when I first moved, I moved into a studio flat just around the corner in Hill Martin Road. So I've lived dotted around here. Yeah. So where was I? Where were we going with that?
Where was we?
Same when you was living around here.
That was it. So when I was So when I was living round, I'd come up and I was doing relatively well off financially wise, right? And I ended up getting to a position. I was actually going to a position where I was supposed to be. I put money down to buy a rental property. Like you can put money down up front, so it's like you're buying
the house to rent it out.
Yeah, but you might put the deposit down in 5 years before the development's done, because basically the developer's trying to get the money so you can build it, right?
Yeah.
And then in
you get
that
a big
time,
discount for that, innit?
Yeah, and in that time, I'd been blowing money, like going out every week, like loving life, but literally pissing money down the drain, right? So it came time for me to have to pay, and I didn't have the money. I think the developer at the time was also being given the runaround by other people because the value hadn't gone up as much. So they were saying they didn't have the money, but I'm like, no, I legitimately don't have the money. So I had to go through a situation where basically I was being told they're going to try and bankrupt me. And I remember I was at work and I had to go to, I used to work near the Royal Courts of Justice, and I took my lunch break off to go and see this woman for her to explain to me what happens when you get made bankrupt. And I was 25 and she was explaining to me, they'll take your assets and basically they'll take some of your pay they'll take your pay limited for like 5 years. And I was thinking to myself, Jesus Christ, like 25 to 30 is supposed to be like the fun living times of your life, right? So I came out of it. So I mean, I was smiling. And she was like, do you understand what I'm saying to you? And I was like, yeah. And she said, why are you smiling about it? I said, I can't understand why somebody would tear my life apart. I mean, don't get me wrong, ultimately this was my own fault because I should have put money aside, but I was like, I can't understand why somebody would tear my life apart just over the sake of however much money it was. Long story short, I did make it out of that in the end, but since that point in time, that's changed me a lot, especially my approach to finance as well, because that was I always assume now, even the more the not more well off I get, but the more financially secure I get, I always assume that everything can fall over tomorrow. Right?
Better believe it.
Yeah, and everything can be stripped from you. So I look at it as kind of being self-sovereign over yourself, right, and taking back control of your own life. Finance is just being one of those. But again, after that was a humbling experience to go through. So on top of everything else, that was another one where I was like, right, I've just been humbled. I was living life just high and wild, right? Everything could have been stripped from me. Again, that was I needed to own that was on me. But again, that was another growing experience. So all of these, whether it goes through, I mean, we're all the product of everything that we've gone through, right? So all of these, and I've said to somebody before, as bad as that was, I don't think I would be in the position I am today because I would have never learned what happens with the difficulties of if you don't manage your finances, for example. And I've said this to somebody recently because I'm like,
you got to fuck things up sometimes.
Well, the thing is,
we'll
probably get. Yeah, I hear you. Cool. We'll probably get into it when we're talking about numbers and economics. But what became apparent as well over COVID, and I feel like nobody's learned the lesson. We've gone back to just forgetting what happened. Is you've got a lot of people who aren't necessarily living paycheck to paycheck, right? But they might be leasing a car or just living not above their means. They're living within their means. But let's say you lost your job. If you lost your job, could you go a year without working based on the finances you've got? Because if you can't, you should be doing shit to get yourself in a position where you can. Because you better believe we just saw the world locked down.
That was my thing right there. That was my thing right there. Can you repeat that, please? The question you asked and then the rebuttal. The question
point about
you're right. You're on.
The point about the last of the year.
Yeah, I want you to give financial advice, but I want you to.
This is not financial advice.
It's not financial advice. Yeah. No. I want you to give financial advice afterwards, but I want you to repeat that. It's a question I want people at home to ask themselves.
Well, it's a question of looking after yourself. So basically, if you were to lose your job tomorrow, could you go a year without working? Because and after we've just seen the world shut down from a global pandemic, yes, we're open again now, but we don't know what will happen in the future, right? And if you get put out of work, especially if it's a competitive environment where everybody wants to be making money, I don't care what level you want to live at. Some people want to have flash cars and the rest of it. I don't mind. Do whatever you want to do. But can you manage a serviceable lifestyle for a year in the absence of a job, right? Because if you can't, you need to be doing whatever you need to get in place to be able to do that. You might want to have hard assets. You might want to just have savings. You might want to invest. I don't care what it is. I mean, it's not down for me personally.
Yeah,
but
do something.
It doesn't matter what it is. But you need to have something. And I think a lot of people, and obviously you get, let's say you're 35. If you don't have, I mean, I don't like personally. I don't like the idea. No, I don't like pensions personally, because I don't like putting some money away for something that I might never be able to reap the rewards. However, I do believe in saving for your retirement, right? But if you've got somebody, let's say they might have a pension that they're paying into, that's fine. But let's say you've got only, I don't know, 10 grand of savings at 35. If you've only managed to accumulate that from your start and working life from 20 to 35, what makes you think that you're magically going to fix that between 35 to 60 so that you can service the rest of your life once you're retired? And people do advance their careers, and they do go up and make more money as they're going up, and they learn to be more financially responsible, and they may change and live within different means, right? Again, this isn't about making money to live a flash lifestyle. Personally, look, I don't do that myself. Yeah. But have you got a plan in place to look after your future? Because we've got into this habit of everybody lives in a high time preference world of I earn my money, I spend my money, and I'll deal with the consequences later. And that is a problem, because once later comes back, we can't rewind the clock. There's nobody here to bail you out for life. Like,
I thought you can't rewind the clock. You said you can't rewind the clock. Oh, your baby mothers, baby fathers out there. Yeah, no, that's
you can't rewind that either.
Yeah.
Do you have any kids?
I don't. No.
Yeah.
No.
Wow.
Are you with someone?
No, not at the moment. It's not that I didn't want to, because again, I look back at people who I grew up with, and a lot of my family, like a lot of my friends, have got kids now, and I haven't got kids. And I see them, and sometimes I can be envious, because I'm like, that looks like they've got the complete package. And I probably spent too much time focused on work through the 20s and 30s, and then you're like, shit, I need to settle down. But it's not one of those things where you can decide to settle down and just find somebody, right?
How old are you?
35.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it's not like I can't settle down still, but that just was, I put it off for so long, and then it was like when I need to settle down, and it just hasn't worked out.
Do you think your options is? You must have you're doing well. You're a fitness guy. You know what I mean? So
fitness guy.
Your options when you go out, you're probably still
You're
having
Spartan.
fun.
Do you know what it is? I think it's part of it is when I'm with somebody, there's the component of, obviously you want to be physically attracted to somebody, but you need to connect on that level where you have a continual chemistry, and there's various different. I can be quite weird in the variety of different views and interests I have in the world, right? Yeah. Like, and you need to be able to get on in all of those factors. So generally, it's just you might meet a girl, but I'm just like, I don't think this is going to work out, because I feel like I might get bored in it, and that's not an insult on them. They're meant to be with somebody else, but also I'm like, when I'm 35, when you're 18, you could spend 3 years with somebody, right? And it's just 3 years. When you're 35, I think you've got a responsibility on both sides of the equation from a dating perspective to say, if this isn't working out, we shouldn't just drag it out for the sake of having somebody to go and spend the night with, right? Because if I drag it out for, let's say, 6 months, but I don't really like you, in that 6 months, you could have met Mr. Right? Likewise, I wouldn't expect a girl to do that for me.
Do you like it on company?
Huh?
Do you like it on company?
I'm comfortable with my own. The thing is, my friend said to me when he came around recently, he said, you're the most introverted people person that I know, because when I'm around people, I'm like, when we go out, I'm like the life of the party.
Social guy,
But then when I'm by myself, I'm very introverted, spend a lot of time, and I can be very quiet and peaceful. I can be completely comfortable with myself.
Definitely.
But then, and why that makes it not challenging when you're meeting somebody. But if I see somebody in a going out environment, I might connect to a girl who I've connected with because I'm in that environment. Yeah. But then on the other side of me, it won't match up. So
at home.
And it's just I'm like I say, I'm a people person that's just mixed.
Is it because they get bored once they see you that side? Because I have the same problem. Let's say, they see me on stage, and then when they see me outside of the performance life, they get bored.
I don't think they get bored. I think it would be. I think some relationships I've been in could be sustainable. I'm just like, I don't think we connect on the same interests, because I don't have anything to them to get, like, I'm not a performer or anything. It's just I've got my work, my training. Obviously, it also needs to fit around that as well. I'm not just going to stop training. So it's finding the balance of meeting somebody that fits.
Yeah, what I just think he was saying, I know you probably get as well, was like, you know, you're in that environment and you're that sociable person.
Yeah.
But when you're at home with the other person, so that sociable person would be his performing person. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. But I don't think they get bored. It's probably that, and I mean this in no harsh way to anybody I've dated. If they haven't watched it's not that they
you bored him. Go home. You're boring.
No,
I'm joking. Sorry,
because it just didn't.
Have you been the person to end it in the last situations that you've been in?
The last situation I was in, actually, she ended it because we'd only been dating for like 3 months. She said, the more we talk, I don't think we've got as much in common as I thought. And she's probably correct, because there were certain topics that we were talking about, and I thought I need to I think we were talking about she was talking about people being able to fix climate crisis and rich people being able to fix climate crisis. And I was trying to explain the nuance between the energy consumption we use and being able to move off green energy to being able to move off fossil fuels to renewable energy, but it has to be sustainable renewable energy. So it just can't be a burst. We can't just have solar everywhere tomorrow, right? That isn't feasibly possible. So I mean, the outcome of it was, so you don't believe in climate change. But I was like, no, that's not the point I'm trying to make here. So I think in that instance, she was correct as well, because the more you got to know me in more depth. And the problem is a lot of my opinions sit outside the Overton window, which is like...
What's that?
It's like the mainstream narrative that most people consume and believe, right? So because I spend a lot of time, I spend a lot of time studying anyway, but I like to be a critical thinker from bottom up. So if I talk about something, then assume that I've probably spent some time understanding it. If I don't know about something, then I'll probably say I don't know about something. So if we get into something like this, I could come across as, well, you're a climate denier, or you're a apologist of this, that, and the other. And so I found myself being a bit reserved in talking to that person. That's probably not the first time that's happened. So yeah, it's been a mix, but the last one was her.
Yeah.
Have you always been like that? Like, because you're on the money. Like, you're like, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it properly. If I want to do something, I want to know how it works. This is the kind of person you perceive me to be. Have you always been like this?
I don't know what started me down like a curious path. But it just, when it happened, I really can't. I think it was when I got introduced to podcasts. And podcasts obviously are not haven't been around for all of our lives, but they picked up. And I'm a curious person, but I started consuming more information around everything. And then I started listening to audiobooks, because I read a lot of books anyway. But I was like, well, I can read relatively fast, but since I listen to things at multiple speed, then a 10-hour book I can listen to in 3 hours, for example. So I started on podcasts, which delved me down different routes, and then from there I started on audiobooks, and I would go on to Audible, which is like Amazon's audio book site, and they have a daily sale on there. So if there was something that I didn't know about and had any form of interest, or thought this might be interesting, I would buy the book, and then I would go down the rabbit hole. So I think I got into quantum mechanics from that. I saw a book on quantum mechanics. I don't know anything about quantum mechanics, so I ordered the book, and then I spent like the next 6 months just consuming. I've consumed it ever since. But that started in around my
what is quantum mechanics? Time and all that. What's that?
So basically the laws of the universe are based on physics now. So we exist in kind of like a Newtonian universe. So this physical universe here. If you go down to the most deepest layer, the atomic layer, then everything exists in a quantum realm. Now down there, the world doesn't exist. It doesn't work the way that it does here. It's in this weird. It's a very strange world which nobody can fully explain yet. Physicists haven't even worked out to explain it. So have you heard of? So you know, you've heard of Einstein before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Einstein created the theory of relativity, and
I'm talking about Marvel. You're talking about Einstein.
No, because I can get onto what you're talking about as well. So Einstein created these theories of relativity, and then we've got how the world works at the quantum layer, and it's the best way of calculating how things will come out that we've come up with. We don't fully understand how it works, and we can't match Einstein's theories of gravity and relativity with quantum mechanics. It's still an ongoing investigation. However, I do know about that, because then I would watch.
Sold.
I think it's because I listen to my podcast at the pace I listen to my podcast. I find that outputs to the way
you're talking about
that I speak.
No, but it talks very clearly, but very fast.
But when I was watching those books. When I was watching the Marvel films, I was like, I think I argued with somebody about in Endgame, because basically in Endgame, you know, when Tony Stark says I figured it out, that's when he figures out.
Paradox.
Yeah, that's when he. Well, you've got many paradoxes, but that's when he figures out how to relate gravity with quantum mechanics. He basically does what nobody else has been able to do. That's how they're able to go back in time.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, nobody's done that. Because the problem is the only place that we know where you potentially, well, the best place that you would potentially be able to find the answer to all of this stuff is behind the event horizon of a black hole. But you can't go into the event horizon of a black hole because nothing can come out of a black hole. I've probably just gone a bit too deep there, but
no, I had black hole in the back of my head.
When you go into a black hole, basically, a black hole is black because nothing can make it out, not even light can make it out. And if you actually look at a black hole,
so I didn't know that.
Yeah, so Interstellar does the film Interstellar does a good job of having a representation of a black hole because it's got like a light disk around it. And it's a light disk that kind of goes like this and comes out like this because there's a point in time where no light can make it out, and there's a point in time where light can't achieve escape velocity, so it kind of has a ring around the outside. But there's a theory to suggest, right, if we could go into the singularity of a black hole, then you could work out the missing theories of physics that we've got. But you can't go in there because you can't pull information out. And if somebody was to go in there, ironically, they would look like they were slowly disappearing to you just because of the way the gravitational pull is on them, but they'd never come out. Now in the film Interstellar, they actually find a way to come out. They make up the physics of it actually is quite sound because they had a famous physicist on board to help them stay as close as they could to it. So that's a good film to watch if you just want to blow your mind.
Interstellar, yeah?
Yeah.
Cool.
But yeah, also all of this, so back to your question about curiosity, I don't know what delved me down it, but I think it was, again, it was just part of the maturity of a person.
It's like you swallowed the information.
Well, I do because when you're listening, because the thing is because I listen when I'm running. So I'm running to the gym, I'm running back, so I'm listening to about 2.5 hours of podcasts a day. So because that's at 2.5 to 3 times speed, that's like 6 to 7 hours of new content just every single day.
Can you get it legible? Well, it must be legible to you.
I mean, to some people, I'll tell you what it sounds like. To some people, my friends always say it sounds like chipmunk. To me, it just sounds normal, basically. But it sounds wow.
Put it close to the mic.
Because to close all of those channels, to actually execute those withdrawals later, to spend it later.
You can understand that.
That's normal to me because I listen to it
Play
continually.
I don't, because it'll flag it up in your thing.
Oh, does it? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so it won't. Yeah, that is normal to me though. But the long short of it is that allows me to consume more on a regular basis. But part of it was when I was younger, I mentioned to you I was an arrogant and I thought I was a know-it-all. Now, the irony is I didn't know shit back then, and I definitely know more now than I did back then. However, I wind up my friends sometimes because I say to them, I'm just an idiot. I'm just a curious idiot, basically. Because the more you know, the more you realise that you don't know. So I have this on my arm, which is basically a quote from Socrates, which is the only true wisdom is in knowing that you know nothing, which is part of accepting the humility of a man as well, is that there are actual rocket scientists out there, right? Now, I don't know shit compared to them, but there is so many books in the world that you could spend 100 lifetimes and never get to all of them, right? So that growing up, this is why I say, when I look back on myself now when I was younger, I'm like, I don't know how people put up with me because I had no right to be the way I was. Whereas now, I'm a much better person, I'm a much more knowledgeable person, but I wouldn't act with the arrogance that I did then because I've learned the humility and wisdom of the course of time. And again, this all comes up with when you listen to books on different areas. You listen to a lot of books on psychology, you start to think, oh yeah, that taps in and that makes sense to me. You've got like the line of behavioral economics, how different people interact with people. Again, oh yeah, that taps in with me. So it sends you to all of these different areas, and that just helps to advance you as a person.
Are you into psychedelics?
No, but I would really like to do a psychedelic experience. So I said this to somebody recently. No, I really would, because I'm not.
That's why I asked him. I can tell, like, because the way
I'm not religious personally, but I do believe that there's something that exists out there that we don't know about. And whenever you hear somebody talk about psychedelic experiences, like, it took me to a different plane.
Yeah.
So I would really like to experience, not just off the cuff, like go and get it from Bob around the corner or something, but you could do like full psychedelic experiences. I do want to at some point. Like, you can go out to, like, in South America and they have like proper shamans doing like ayahuasca ceremonies, and it's supposed to be brutal on your body physically. I was listening to a guy the other day. He was like, another guy in the group with him shit himself. He was sick. Like, it's brutal on you, but he was like, it was completely life altering experience for him. So I do really want to do it.
Because how you live your life and how you run, and like, it seems like you keep your body quite clean just from being able to run. But so usually they say, not trying to promote it like that, but I'm just saying, I'm just a person that into it. I haven't done it myself, but I study them just because I'm interested in it. But they say, like, the more cleaner your body is.
He sells them. He's got psychedelics.
Yeah, the more cleaner your body, the better your experience, and just depend. And a lot of people that I've spoken to that are into them are they very much thinkers like yourself.
Yeah, well, the thing is, because I know that I get not from experience of doing it, obviously, but prior to doing it, you have to fast.
Yeah.
And they all talk about being sick.
Yeah.
And they often people refer that as to experience of it purged something from their prior life or past.
Exactly.
And because they're like, well, I didn't have anything to sick up, so the sick is like, that must have purged something. I think a woman said that she had a weird taste of something that she had associated with cancer treatment. And then that taste no longer she no longer had that same taste for the experience because she felt she had purged it through that. So that's why I think it is you go into it with a clean body and come out. And the thing is, everybody's experience is different, so you can read up as much as you like. But the reason I want to experience it is because I'm like, everybody says, I wish I could explain it, but I can do my best as I can to explain it, but I can't fully explain that. So I'm like, that's why I would like to have the experience of the controlled environment.
It's for certain characters. I think you're one of them. You know, it's for certain like characters of critical, because again, like things like mushrooms does a lot for like a lot of his information that he's taking in. It was, you know, like,
have you done it?
No, but I've been around people and had the conversations and whatever. So even like DMT, which is another one that it kind of makes you meet God, basically. Makes you meet God, yeah. But you know, I'm just giving you a little quick example of it. You can do your own research on them, but for a lot of critical thinkers that I know, that they're very interested in the psychedelics. That's why I even thought to ask him, because he seems like someone that he'll take a book, listen, you know what I'm saying, listen to it, take this and take this on. So it's very good for, or not good, I don't want to say it was good, but I've heard it's good for critical thinkers. Yeah, like,
and I think there is a lot to that as well, because I think at this point in time, I'll find myself like referring to information, but I couldn't tell you which book I've got it from because I don't. But I think when they go into that realm, what you can do is you can take and there's so much of our subconscious that we don't even access. Exactly. That I think that allows them to be like, oh, I'll just pull this information that I didn't know from ages. So I think the more dense kind of the volume of information is in your mind, I think it works. But I would love to do it.
How do you feel like critical thinking affects your life and relationships with people?
I think from a life perspective, I'll tell you what, I went down a rabbit hole a few years ago, which is again ties, but the theory of it is it primarily gives you like a layer of truth to base on, and because of that, I think the thing is it can be challenging sometimes when you're dealing with people and having long nuanced conversations, because a lot of people will talk openly about something that they don't know something about, right? So again, when I say to you, if I don't know something about it, I'll stay out of the conversation. I'll just be like, I don't know enough to comment on that. I'll probably then go and do a shitload of reading. So I do know enough to comment, but I'll just be like, I don't know about that. And so you can have these conversations with people where you're starting from bottom up, but you're talking to somebody who is just taken something that they heard on the mainstream. I had a conversation with somebody recently. We were talking about something. He said, and I know that to be true because my friend works in this industry. And I'm thinking to myself, well, that's great, but I'm not having a conversation with your friend. I'm having a conversation with you, right? So we're not having. And again, I don't. The frustrating part of it is, and I don't mind having conversations with anybody. What I get frustrated with is when people are not willing to actually do the benefit of listening to your arguments out there, because then you get into these circular conversations that can be quite challenging. So, and I think from a relationship perspective, equally it can have the same thing. So if I talk about the one that we had before, there are areas that we might talk about, and she had brought up like things like, well, we shouldn't have as many children in the world, because one of the policies is, right, we should not have as many human beings because we've got an overpopulated society. I have a completely different theory to that. So that was a theory that was created by a guy called Thomas Malthus. So people who have that approach to life are typically referred to as Malthusians. We need to find a way to depopulate the world. I'm like, well, no, you need to find a way to create more human flourishing, right, in the world, right? We shouldn't be putting policies in place that want to kill people or reduce the population. But that is a common narrative that comes out, and that wasn't anything against her. So, but then if I come up to this and I respond to it from a kind of bottom down based on the information that I have and have learned, then all of a sudden, well, it's not even you're putting that, well, you're a climate conspiracy theorist, or you're putting this particle or the other, right? And I'm like, I'm not in any of those. I don't identify with any of these. I don't identify from any political leaning. I'm simply telling you something based on the level of information that I've invested time in to do. So it means that, but on the benefit of that, it means that if you can surround yourself with people where you can bridge that, it's almost like it clears out the weeds. Because then if you've got the same people around you who are the same kind of thinking, then it leads to more, I think it leads to better relationships, because you're not holding anything back. So if I know somebody can be open, even if we don't agree, like we can still have an active conversation. You might disagree with me, but I'm not saying anything to offend you. And sometimes that happens. Our views differ and the person gets offended. I'm not saying anything in a deliberate way to offend you, and you shouldn't be offended because of the fact that I have a different opinion, right? And then once you weed all of those out, then actually you have more deep and meaningful conversations with the people that you have around.
You can have a real conversation. You have a real conversation.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
You prefer people that just want to are open to learn, like rather than someone even feeling like they need to challenge you.
Well, the best thing is, right, the best conversations you can have is somebody who's got a different opinion to you. And people don't necessarily want to have that because people don't want to feel like they're wrong or they're stupid.
That's right.
And I do it a lot. And somebody will say something to me and I was like, do you know what, he's right. And then I will go and, one, it will help me, it does multiple things. One, it helps you sharpen your own position. It might help you sharpen your own argument. Or it might say, actually, I didn't know what I thought I knew, so I'm going to go off and research that way. But a lot of people will like, well, no, I am right. And you can't defer me anyway, and I'm not going to listen to you, and I'm not going to go and educate myself on what it is, right? And having a conversation with somebody like that, it's just like, I might as well just run headfirst into a wall. But you get a lot of people who are like that. So yeah, it's
that's why I say, does it have a problem? Because even me, like, I'm just a person that likes to think outside the box, challenge stuff, and things like that, and I get a lot of pushback. Yeah, just being like that. You know what I mean? Sometimes I'm not even someone that reads as much as yourself. I do read, and I'm very into researching things. Yeah. But it's like when you do come with something that you actually researched, and you can actually hear when someone hasn't researched it or hasn't any knowledge of it, but they're still coming against you based on their friend.
And that's annoying, right? Yeah, and that's annoying when it happens.
Very annoying. That's what I'm saying. I'll get to the point when I start saying, okay.
Yeah. Sometimes you just sit there quietly, and I'm like, well, this isn't gonna work. Or you quickly wrap up a conversation.
You got to quickly wrap up.
Because exactly the point that you made there. You can tell in your conversation with somebody when they're not even just bullshitting. They're not even deliberately doing it. It's just maybe part of their character. But you know they haven't researched, and you can tell in seconds. So you're already like, whatever conversation with this, whatever way this goes in, it's not going to make a difference. You're already being insincere in the way that you're coming to the table, right? But it shouldn't be that you should take beauty in the fact that you've got a difference of opinions to have a wide ranging conversation, like I say. And if you've got somebody who's closed minded who just says, well, I don't want to hear that, and I'm not willing to learn. But at the end of the day, you're not going to learn anything from that conversation. So what's the point in expending your time in it?
Exactly. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes it's the people that are, you realise the angle of where they're trying to go with the conversation. Say like if there's other people in the room. Yeah, you notice that, you just want to win around these people. You don't actually care whether we find a solution or an answer. You just want these people to...
It's ego, isn't it? Yeah. I want to leave this as they thought I was right and I was the
you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And when you see it's that sometimes as well, that's something that makes me wrap up a conversation as well. It's like, you just want to be right for the sake of these people saying, he was right. It's not a game here. I was actually having a conversation.
Because it's not a fair exchange. You're in it for a fair exchange, right? I'm going to share my opinion. I'm going to accept your opinion. Whereas they're not in it for a fair exchange. They're just in it for a win.
There's people out there that they feel better when they win a conversation. That
is a large majority of people.
It's a lot.
I can understand with women because women are a bit more emotional driven. You know what I mean? So when they just want to win a conversation, it's a bit more understandable.
But men are ego driven as well.
Men are very ego driven. Women when they want to be right, it's not so much ego, it's like emotion. So even if they know they're wrong, they just argue.
Yeah, no, that's the draining one. If you just want to, if you're right, you're right. If you're wrong, or you want to be right when you're wrong, that's a lot.
Yeah, that's
so draining, man.
And when you get into nuanced conversations, though, the blur between right and wrong is not clear. So therefore, it's just a point of just have a long form. And that's why I think if you look at, we're doing one right now, right? But that's what's given birth to the popularity of like long form conversations and podcasts, because people go into nuance. They have in-depth conversations which require nuance rather than a short interview clip on 60 seconds on a BBC, right? Which is not going to get your full view and opinion of stuff.
Like to talk. It's good to talk. Life talks. Fawole. Gotta drop it in there.
Yeah,
as we do. Let's talk numbers, economics, because as we already know from the conversation, how you think and how you attack things. How'd you get into numbers?
Do you know what? I started to question the fact that some of this stuff that we were just, not me just personally, again, it was just a curiosity rabbit hole, but you started to question certain things in the world don't seem to make sense from an economic perspective,
like Neo.
right? Yeah, and then
They'll call you Neo from now on.
Well, my friend refers to sometimes because of the speed I listen to stuff. He's like, yeah, like
Come
you know
on,
when he
and you're talking about it now, yeah. You good?
And you look at like certain components which again don't add up, and then it puts you down the economics rabbit hole. So let's take an example of houses. Now, I'm 35, so I've got friends who have got houses. Somebody's 25 now, a house is already getting out of reach for them. So, and if you look back to like our parenthoods, let's say if you go back into the 70s or 80s, especially down here as well, the value that would have gone up to, they probably bought a house for like, I don't know, 10, 20k or something that might be worth like $1 million now, right?
Yeah.
Now, yes, you can improve houses, and so that gives them an additional value. And yes, you can have supply and demand. So there might be an area which has got more economic activity going on there. So London obviously has access to businesses, therefore houses will go up in value. But ultimately, you could take just a house that was bought in the 70s and it would have gone up in value today, right? Yeah. The house hasn't become more valuable. So if the house hasn't become more valuable, then why am I paying 5, 6 times, 10 times the price?
Yeah.
Because the money that you're paying for has become less valuable, right? And so then when you start going down this rabbit hole, and that leads you to how broken the current financial and global monetary system is. So I'm going to ask a question that I ask people, and they often think I'm asking a trick question. I'm not asking a trick question. What is the British pound backed by?
Yeah, you think it was supposed to be gold, isn't it? But it's not anymore.
No.
The British,
the British pound,
reputation?
No, nothing. So the British pound is basically backed on a financial background of the reserve currency of the world, which is the US dollar. Yeah. What's the US dollar backed by?
Isn't that about gold?
£1.
Nothing. Printing.
The British pound?
So, no,
it's just
again,
printed.
you're asking because you think I'm asking a trick
No,
question.
the
I'm
British
not
pound.
asking a trick question.
It's just printed, isn't it?
Correct. So you've got back in 1971, there was until it was kind of like a pseudo gold standard that you had for years, for millennia. We had a gold standard that worked for civilization, right? Yeah. And then around 1934, we kind of separated from it a bit. So in 1933, I think it was, there was an executive order 6102 in the US that basically said it's illegal to own gold. Basically, you had to give it to the government and they would give you a set amount for it. They sold you less for it, so basically debased them. You didn't get as much as you should have got prior to that order, right? So it was like semi-backed the dollar. So but you couldn't
it's
have
illegal
more,
to own gold.
Yeah. So you couldn't. So they had to give it to the government, and then you couldn't have more US dollars in existence than the gold that you had in your reserves. So what they held in Fort Knox. Then in 1971, Richard Nixon said, right, we're doing away with that. Now, the reality is the need to do away with that is because they needed to fund wars. And you can't have indefinite wars if you run out of money. Well, the easiest way to fix that is create more money. Yeah. So ever since 1971, we've lived in a fiat money-based system. So fiat means by decree. So basically, all the pounds and dollars we have, we just live by that because the state and central banks tell us we have to do that, okay? Mm-hmm. Now, equally, if I was to ask you what are these currencies backed by, I could ask you how many pounds exist in the world.
That's a good point.
Nobody knows. How many dollars exist in the world? They don't know because there was also a euro dollar created that added more to that. So you've got a currency that nobody can even tell you the full extent and value of what exists, right? So let's do just a little game. Let's say we've got, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 of us, right? So we have 10 marbles. So we split them out. We've got 2 each. Mm-hmm. Each of our marbles is worth 1/10 of that whole amount, right? Yeah. Now, what you don't know is I actually have a marble printer machine when I go home. So I'm going to go home and I'm going to create 10 more marbles. Now, I'm going to keep those. So now I have 12 marbles. Yeah. But you still just have your 2 each. But your 2 each have all become less because I've printed more of them. So what do you think happens when more money is created in the system? Our pounds that exist become worth less. So when you're talking, and the worst thing is, the most insidious thing about this is we've been convinced that This is the way that it's supposed to work. So when you hear about inflation, right?
Yeah.
We have inflation targets. We've got wildly high inflation right now. But why do we have inflation targets? Why do you plan? Generally, they'll aim to, prior to COVID, let's have a 2% inflation target. Why do I need to have an inflation where the target of my prices going up all the time? Well, obviously, they know they can do that because inflation is actually a representation of the number of monetary units that exist in the system. So every year they're going to create 2% more. Even gold has an inflation rate, right? Because it's it's about 1.5% gold, the amount that we're able to mine, new gold we're able to mine each year. So you go down all of these routes, and this is why I end up going. So in the 30s and 40s, you had it's basically called Keynesian economics, which believes that you should be able to have inflation. Keynesian economics, John Maynard Keynes, depending on how you want to pronounce it. And he was of the opinion that, we need to have inflation because, and a lot of people now will argue, right, in the absence of an inflationary currency, how would we be able to deal with hard times, right? How would we deal with financially difficult times if we can't create more money? Well, the reality is there would be hard times, but you'd have to actually deal with them and things would have to reset. Things don't have to reset now. What happened in 2008? The global financial crisis. All the banks, there was one bank, there's a couple of banks that failed, but the rest of them were all bailed out. They were all bailed out by new money that was created. Now, if you look at, and this is if you look at the amount of dollars that exist in the world today, right? And obviously in COVID, they had to have stimulus packages where they needed to feed the environment. Do you know that in the last 3 years, over 80% of the dollars that have ever been in existence were printed in the last 3 years?
Wow.
It's a fucking mad sum, right?
How much?
80%. 80%. 80% of all the dollars that have existed in the system.
But it makes sense because, like, I'm not saying there wasn't before, but there's so many more billionaires now. Like, certain things are just, everything's
So
just, the way things are priced, and it's just stupid numbers now.
Correct. And
this company's very quick and just, you go on.
This is another problem, right? Because so the way that the system is set up today is the people who are closest to the creation of the money get the best benefit from it. It's called the Cantillon effect. It was created by a guy, Richard Cantillon. I can't remember the date that it was created. But basically what he's saying is the people who are closer, so somebody who's a millionaire today, right? The reason that they don't have the problem is because they don't just have cash sitting in the bank, they have hard assets. And then they also have access to better debt instruments than we have. So we might want to go and get a loan, which is going to have 2, 3, 5% attached to it, right? Somebody who's a millionaire who's got a business might be able to get a considerable loan at 0 to like 1%. That means, and then he'll go and use that to pay off an asset for it. And what happens? All of this trickles down to the bottom. And the reality is all this money that you pumped into the system, these people got it early. They took it, invested in stuff before it went up in price. Then it goes up in price. When it gets down to the bottom, who are the people that are hit the most? The people who are trying to go to the shops and need to worry about the increase of the prices of what they're trying to buy. And at the very low rungs, you've got people who a 1-2% increase in the food that they need to buy, they can't afford that. Like a lot of us, we can accept that. Yes, an annoyance that you have increases in prices, but it's not. I might have to make a change from this gourmet thing to this normal thing, right? But for some people, that's the difference between actually feeding your kids for the end of the week, and they've got no control over it. Like it's all being done from the top down. There is nothing they can do to get out of it, and so. This, I mean, once you go down this rabbit hole, it's almost like it's almost like in the Matrix where you can take the blue pill or you can take the red pill, right? And once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. It all seems broken. Now, there are various reasons why it's done. I don't know what the options are for us to be able to fix it at the end of the day. We've created a situation that we exist in today where since 1971, we have created so much so in the 80s, at least in the US, they were at a point where inflation was high. And what they did, have you heard before where they mentioned increasing and decreasing interest rates? So like the Bank of England do it and the Fed does it over in the US, right?
All the time.
And in the US, and they announce it. Yes. Exactly.
All the time.
And the market always responds to it, right? And back in the 80s, when they had high inflation, a gentleman who was in charge of the Fed at the time, Paul Volcker, he increased rates to 20%. Now, you couldn't even increase the rates in the US to 10% because the US would go insolvent. You can't have one of the greatest countries in the world, as it's marketed, go bankrupt. So they're in this position where, and you'll see it. Just pay attention over the next course of the months, right? And just pay attention to what comes out of Fed policy in the US. And I bet what you'll see is well, we're going to hike rates, and then they will hike rates, and the market will bubble up, and then they will say we need to reduce rates. And then when they reduce rates, what do they need to do? They need to print more money. Therefore, we inflate costs again. System perpetuates, just goes on in perpetuation. I've said to a friend, at some point, this whole thing's got to blow up, like it's got to explode. I don't know what that looks like. It's going to be pretty brutal, but it can be manipulated and moved through at the moment.
What's happening in Venezuela? Like, I don't know much about it.
The Venezuela Bolivar.
So I just know that food prices went from everything's prices went from one thing to another, where it became almost damn impossible to buy the stuff you used to buy before. So what happened? That's
hyperinflation. So
would that to you be an explosion though? Like what you're saying, that's like an explosion, but in their country, not a worldwide thing. But it's a more So
it's completely that. So it's hyperinflation is referred to when you've got over a 50% increase in inflation month on month, right? So in places like that, people get paid, and on the day they get paid, they go and rush to buy stuff, like not even late of the day, the time they get paid, because their bread might have changed in price between now and 4 hours later. So and you've got places in places where they experience hyperinflation, go through points in time where, and you've seen this in quite a few countries, where they will use the currency as toilet roll because it costs more of the currency to actually buy toilet roll because the currency has lost its rate. You've seen it. There are other parts of the world where it's happened. You can go back. I
remember there was. This is in school. Germany. Where they had. I don't know what.
Germany.
Yeah. The money was just in the streets and stuff. Yeah. I don't know. That's crazy. You know, the things that you remember being taught, but because they chose to teach us what they wanted to teach us back in the day, across the board. But I just remember that. But go on, Jim.
Well, because the thing is, and it sounds, and don't be wrong. Everything runs on how we exchange value with each other, and we exchange value through money, right? So when you say that the world revolves around money, that's not people being egotistical and push on money and materialism over everything else. You can't get around the fact that we all exist to better our own ends. Therefore, we need a medium of exchange. That is money. Now, if that's manipulated, that has knock-on effects.
Some water.
If you've got more, that'd be great.
Yeah, I have to be tap water.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I can wait though.
So you don't want to tap water?
No, it's fine because I will.
Don't trust the government.
No, it's not that. We'll break the conversation.
No, I'm missing. Go.
So if you look at what happened in Weimar Germany, so after World War One, Germans were forced to pay back loans that they could not pay, which led to hyperinflation of their environment, which led to like a breakdown of society. Do you know what coincided that? Somebody who popped up who had very far right views, and so there is an argument you could say that without the breakdown, without the breakdown of the monetary system and the societal impacts that had, then it wouldn't have given the breeding ground for Hitler to rise up. Now that could have still happened, but what I'm saying is there are knock-on impacts of how you deal with a monetary policy, and what should be even more worrying is last week, I think it was maybe even 2 days ago, the head of the World Bank and IMF basically said that we don't necessarily think through the impacts of our decisions with regards to financial monetary policy. I don't think that was word for word.
He was saying this was...
No, it's two women. And so this is your job. This is your only job. And it's not your only job, but it's their main job. And basically saying we don't think through the impacts, and which is basically saying we don't think through the impacts of creating all of this new monetary figures into the global economy. Because again, it just has a knock-on effect. The rich get richer, the poorer get poorer. And so that drove me down. And so there's an alternative approach to this, right? There's an alternative line of economics, which is the Austrian school of economics. Now, in the Austrian school of economics, I mean, they believe that we should have a hard money to be backed by, right? Which was previously gold. Now, we understand why gold... The problem with gold is, one, it could be seized, and we've seen it been seized, but there's an additional challenge.
Give me that gold!
Well, the additional challenge is we needed to create paper money because it's difficult for us to exchange in gold on an easy basis. We needed to create a way that it could be easily transported across the world, so we do that using cash and on a digital basis now when you're going into your bank. So... There's a Austrian economist, Friedrich Hayek, who's got a famous quote. I'll probably butcher it a bit, but he basically said, "I don't believe we will ever have a hard money again. The only way we will be able to have one is if we can, in some roundabout way, introduce something that the government can't stop." So, and the premise of that being is the only way to have a hard money standard back is you need to remove the power and management of money from centralized state, and the reason for that being is. And it's nothing that we can beat or do anything with. Humans are fundamentally flawed. In the sense of, if there is an easy way out, then you will take an easy way out. If somebody says at this moment in time, especially the governments, if you think that a government always wants to be re-elected, right? So they're always thinking short term in their decisions. So they're not thinking long term. They don't want to actually fix stuff. And so therefore, no, because they just want to get re-elected, right? So if somebody says, right, you can deal with the hardships of not creating more money, or You can click a button on this computer and create more billions, because that's what they do, click a button
Yeah, of course,
and
of
create
course.
more billions. This is free, this is hard.
Yeah.
And humans will always... So even if somebody comes in and says, don't worry, you can trust this politician, okay, fine, but I won't be able to trust the next politician, right? So as long as the monetary system exists under the control of central government, we will always be in this position. Now, the problem is, and I have a gripe with it, I mean, I have where I think that a proposed solution could come from, but the problem with all of this is none of this is ever taught to you in the mainstream avenues of education. I mean, you would think it would be important to understand about finances, how the economy works, how the economy could work to flourish, for human beings to flourish, as opposed to the broken way it works today. But you don't touch on really economics in school anyway, let alone the fact it doesn't work. They don't really touch on it. They pick and choose, as you say, what parts they work. You can show pictures of why Weimar Germany went through, what it looked like, papers on the floor, but you don't explain how that works. Because then some insightful kid then might start asking questions that you don't want to know the answer to. You're not taught how you would actually deal with. I was talking to a friend yesterday, he's 23 now, he's just moved down here, and I was saying, look, the most important thing that you can do is whatever you do, and it's harder to do now because if inflation is at 8% and a savings account only offers you 2.5%, right, you're still 6% underwater. You're 2.5% better off than if you just had cash, because then you'd go out and lose an 8% of value year on year on year, right? But I said to him, the best thing you can do is just every month take 10% of your savings and put it away. I said, when you get 12 years down the line and you'll be at 35, if you've consistently managed to do that, then at least you've looked after your financial future, right? But no, kids are never told about that.
Take 10% of your savings and put it away.
Well, no, take 10% of your earnings and then put it away into savings. I mean, do more if you can. Like, I tend to save more than that. But if it just save something, because you're not taught at school what that actually looks like on a compounding basis. If they taught everybody at school, right, these are the good practices, even if only 50% of kids came out and from the age of 18 started saving like £500 a month and finding somewhere that was interest bearing, then they'd be very well off. Like, yeah, they'd be very. I said to somebody, if I grew up here, I would have been living at home until 25. I would have been able to pay rent. I would have been able to get more savings away, right? But none of this stuff is taught, and the problem is now it's become even more fundamentally difficult because everything is broken. People are forced, actually, and because money doesn't hold its value, you've noticed everybody wants to become a trader nowadays.
I was going to say, what do you think of crypto?
So we'll get onto this in a second.
Is different.
Well, no, we'll get onto this in a second. Because everybody is forced to be a trader because they need to make more money, whether that be in equities, whether that be in crypto. Now, what do I think of crypto? I don't like crypto itself. For me, it's only Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the only thing that I would ever, and I don't ever tell people to buy Bitcoin, but I will tell them to understand and learn about it for a simple reason that it gives hope of a way out of this mess. Now, there's a deliberate reason for that, right? I don't know how much you know about crypto, so hopefully I'm not teaching the nanny to suck eggs, right?
We've got 10.
So I can give you a run through, and then this will give you an incentive to go off and learn yourself, right? So when we were just talking about not being in control of the monetary policy, right? Bitcoin is controlled by nobody. It's completely decentralized. You've got people who run their nodes, which is, so basically money is fundamentally a ledger, and Bitcoin is a digital ledger, and it's the most incorruptible ledger that we've got in the world. I mean, this is going to sound hyperbolic, but the discovery of Bitcoin is almost could be comparable to the discovery of fire if you look at what it could mean for society, right? So we were talking about how much money exists in the system. We don't know. We do know there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin, right? That will only ever happen. Now, the last one will be mined in 2140, but we know how many there are. I can look on my node at home. I can look on somebody else's node. We can verify every transaction. We can verify how many there are, right? Now, if we were talking about gold, if there was somebody who created an ability to mine gold more efficiently, then you can guarantee mining companies will go out and find that power, and they'd start increasing that inflation rate of 1.2% to like 5%, and you're getting more gold in, right? It'd still be difficult, but they'll find a way to do it. Now, to create new Bitcoin, basically it happens on average a 10-minute basis, right? And they will mine a new block in short, at high level, then you create 6 more Bitcoins at the moment, right?
I'm not.
No, but the reason this is important is because this can be after 2 weeks. There is an adjustment that takes place, so it maintains the distribution. So it will continue across the course of time. Now, the reason this is important for people going forwards is if we don't have access to something where you can put your savings, if you would put money into Bitcoin and you just have it for long-term savings, then since its conception, then it's been the fastest growing asset in history, right? So if you can put money away for 4 years, you can guarantee you're going to have more today than if you had it in cash, which it's not it's going to lose its value in cash, right? Now, this is not me telling people to buy Bitcoin. I'm saying go out and do research and find that the monetary system is broken. Therefore, you need to look for a way, an alternative to that. Now, personally, I think that you could adopt Bitcoin because you could say, this is my long-term savings. Let's say I'm 18. If I put £100 in there until I'm 35, it's likely that you're going to increase in value or you're going to save it. Again, you need to understand it because it's volatile. This is important, though, because in an age at the moment where, as I say, if you're 25, what is it you're actually hopeful for at the moment when you're going to work? Because a house is out of your reach. If you can't afford to buy a house, then looking after the security of your family is out of reach. So you could be doing all this, and that's what I mean. You're working to spend money fast, to not plan for the future. Because what's the point in planning for the future? Because it just keeps getting further and further out of my reach.
Facts.
And so the reason that I say that is, if you can, there's a saying, the slogan we say is fix the money, fix the world. Because if you have a base layer that everybody can trust, that everybody can get access to, that can't be stolen, that's actually important for you, I, everywhere else. There are parts of like Africa where they don't have access to a monetary system, they can get access to Bitcoin. There are parts of, let's say we were in the wrong political leanings or whatever, and they wanted to shut down your bank account or seize your assets, like they're doing with the Russians at the moment. They can't do that if you've got 24 words in your head, right? So the reason that I bring that up on this is from a perspective of life talk.
What does that mean?
What do you mean?
24 words in your head.
So to hold your own Bitcoin, you have to create basically a seed phrase, which is 24 words. So those 24 words are unique to your wallet. And so you could walk across a border, you could get on a plane knowing those 24 words. For all you know, you might have 1 Bitcoin, you might have 100 Bitcoins, all right? Nobody would know. You couldn't do that with gold, though. You can't even take cash across somewhere without getting interrogated about why you've got it for, right? So one, I think this is important because it's an alternative to what's broken at the moment. But two, I just think at the moment, everybody who grew up in the 80s, it was difficult not to make it because you just had to work and you got the benefit of everything going up in value. You bought your house. Well, I always find it ironic when people complain that their house has gone down in value by like 10 grand. I'm like, yeah, but it's gone up tenfold from when you bought it. Like, so what are you beefing about? And so, but all of this again it's an understanding of stuff, and it goes back to the curiosity thing. Is people in general, from a kind of a life talks and a developmental and what you can take from a perspective is all of these are things that you wouldn't necessarily pick up on a day-to-day. Like I was talking to my mum about it. She was like, yeah, but people don't understand this. I was like, yeah, but the reality is I've had to spend thousands of hours reading this. I shouldn't have to spend thousands of hours to work out how the money that I've worked for and put hard time and value in for, how I can actually make that last. I shouldn't have to be a financial analyst and a side-round economist and a trader on top of my normal job. How about we just have a position where actually people can go and do what they've got value for and put money away and actually rely on that, right? And so I think the more people that go down the avenue, not just this of economics, but anything, if you can expand 1 to 2 hours a day of just learning something new. It's the same as though we were talking about doing hard stuff on a physical basis. Right? If you can do something new each day, if you can learn something new each day, let's say you can learn, if you're not consuming any new information at the moment, do half an hour for one every day, do that for a year, just a year. That's going to be compound information, and you probably find, actually, I quite like this, right? Then that 1 hour becomes, that 30 minutes becomes 1 hour. If you're doing this on a compounding basis, think of where the alternative is. Look to the future self of you and think of how much more you would know in 5 years if you did that every day for 5 years versus if you didn't pick up this practice. In 5 years from now, you wouldn't have picked up anything, right? So it's all of this. I mean, like I say, it took me down the economics rabbit hole, which led me to alternatives and seeing how broken the system is. And again, that goes back to that point that we were raising earlier on. If you are not in a position where you cannot work for the next 12 months, then it roots back to this, because if you don't understand how finances work, you don't actually understand how difficult it could get and how quickly it could get to that. So therefore, you should be planning for that accordingly. But all of it all wraps into one, because most people have not got the time. Don't get me wrong, I'm single, I haven't got a family, so I've got time to consume this information, but most people are not even making efforts. And we live in a world of abundant information, right? I can listen to podcasts when I'm running, when I'm cooking, when I'm cleaning or doing whatever, right? You have to listen to it at multiple bit speed. You can just listen to it. You've got access to anything on the internet. We went from when we were growing up, like a computer was like when I was in primary school, you had to get lucky enough to have time on a computer, and that was only for us to play those games, which was a yes or no decision one,
and the
right?
phone's off. So while you're using the computer, the phone's off, so you got an hour.
And you had the modem. So the information is abundant now, so it doesn't make any difference whether you're 30, 40, 50, 15, 20, 25, right?
Yeah.
But I'm pretty confident that once you get into the habit of doing that, it just becomes like a perpetual thing that
definitely.
that you get almost addicted to. Like if I spent a day not listening to anything,
Learning
I'd just be
something.
like, yeah. I wasn't. My unproductive days, I often say, are probably more productive than my old version of me because I've still probably consumed about 4 or 5 hours of new information. Even if I've done nothing else, I've still learnt some new stuff for the day. And as I say, it compounds over the course of the years. If I had access to all this stuff when I was 18, I joke with people, I was like, I'll probably be smart by now. Like, but I'm trying to catch up from like, I'm trying to catch up from like, yeah. But again, it's just that humility of
You
understanding.
probably say, if I run regularly, I'll be in shape by now.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
but it's the earlier you
You know
start,
what I
the
mean?
better it is. So I'm like, if you've got
Yeah.
access to that now when you're young, and especially my godson, last point that I finished on is my son, cousin was talking about my godson and got into the high school they wanted to get to, which is a good high school. And I just said to him, just make sure that outside of that, you continue to teach him additional information because he won't learn enough just in what they get from the curriculum. Like, it's good to be in a good school, but cultivate that kind of practice of curiosity. Because if I'd had this kind of if I could go back to myself in when I was 15 and say, develop this area of curiosity and pursue it more and have access to the tools that we've got today. I think we could all say if we all had that 20 years ago, then we would be, if nothing else, you don't need to be in a better financial position, whatever your life goals are,
Be
right?
aware.
But you'd be a better whole developed person.
Be aware,
right?
yeah. Definitely be aware. This has been a deep one, Ben.
I told you when we were talking down here, and I was
Yeah.
like, we can go anywhere you want.
But we're going to come back as well. Are you filming?
No.
That's me, you know. Have you got any more questions?
No, do you know what? I think you should get him on for a second one because I like his conversation and I want to go into NFTs, but I think that's a whole other conversation that you ain't got time for.
And I'm rushing a little bit. Sorry, Ben, that was like it's amazing. I need 3. Like, I don't want to
got you
sit back
uh,
and watch this. Yeah, that's Life Talks. It's Ben,
Been good, man.
aka the runner. I don't call you the analyst. You're gonna get new names for it as well. That's Life Talks.
Great episode.
We got the voice by the camera, the wizard. We got Freddie in the back. Yeah, Life Talks.